there, welcome to this episode of Experts on Purpose. The special guest we have today is Parisa Bady. Parisa is the founder and CEO of mehrouse Media, which is a marketing agency for small businesses in the medical industry. She is also a relationship expert who helps people build more connected relationships. Let's speak to Parisa to find out how this engineer turned entrepreneur has built businesses based on her expertise. Hey, Parisa, thank you so much for coming on Experts on Purpose.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So, let me get started with where it all began. Your Instagram bio says that you were a former engineer who has now become an entrepreneur. So, did you always wanted to be an entrepreneur, or it just happened along the way?
It kind of happened a way. I think I always had it in the back of my mind, but I never really planned for it until I was fed up with the corporate life and with the I was working in the aerospace industry,
Uh-huh.
and few years. I think I was working in aerospace alone for like 6 years, and then before that in construction industry. So um, after that, I was like, you know what, I'm done with working for. I want to create my own thing. So that's when it all started.
Sure. So, what was your first business? Right now, you're known as a relationship expert. So, did you know that this is your area of expertise, and did you get into it immediately?
No, not really. I've gone a few different routes first before I really figured what I want to do, because I started my 9 to 5 job when I was 26. So I was fairly young when I started going this route, and I tried a few different. Aside from what I do with relationships and communication, I have a full time business that I run on. So um, it depends on which one you want me to talk about. But all these relationships and communication, it started a little later after I took a few different routes. But mainly it started when I was working in a aerospace, like I told you, and I was the only woman in, like, I think we had 180 uh, people in the office area and the engineering team, and I was the
Yeah.
only woman. I was having a look, and that was aside from the whole manufacturing area. But it was a very uh, masculine dominant
Mm.
environment, and very high pace, and everybody so aggressive and so like to the point. And I had a really hard time, like at the beginning, to find my way and like fit in a way.
Right.
And people like just shutting me off in the meetings, and I would just
Mhm.
start to speak up, and they would like try to ignore me and be like, oh well, your opinion doesn't matter, or things like that. That was like the few first months, and I was 22 when I started that job. So I was like fairly young, and it took me or younger, I was 21, something like that. But it took me like a good 6 months to be able to even talk in meetings without my voice shaking and things like that. But after, like, I think about a year, I got promoted to be a project manager, and then I was working with all these people that their amount of the years of their experience was more than my age.
Mm.
And I wasn't their manager, so I didn't have any authority over them, but I had to like get the job done, and I had to like get them really to do what I wanted them to do. So that's when I really started learning how to communicate better, how to like influence people in a way, and
Uh-huh.
how to really. That's when I realized how much power we have as women
Mm.
in friends, especially in our relationships with men in any shape or form, but how much we can influence them, and how much we can like put on a smile and use our feminine energy to like really get them to influence them, to get them to. For me, my goal was to get them to do what I needed them to do, and it was working. So um, after a few years of being in that, then I
Mm.
uh, decided to quit my job, and I started taking another.
Sorry, I missed the last part. Could you just repeat the last line? You quit the job and?
and I started to take an alternative route.
Sure. So, what's really amazing is there were certain skills that you needed to really do well in your first job, and like improving your communication skills, uh, learning the persuasion skills, things like that, right? Which
Mhm.
you're now using in your business. So, at
Yeah.
what point did you realize that over the years you've developed this as a skill which you were using for yourself, but now you're teaching it to others as well? So at what point did you realize that I must not keep this expertise to myself and it is worth impacting others as well?
I think that's when that shift happened in my head, is when I actually went to a workshop. That was a relationship workshop, and it was like a 3 days workshop, and it was very extensive, very intense.
Mm-hmm.
And when I took that after that workshop, like I took a few of those, and then I started working as an assistant in those workshops, and then little by little, I think that's when it triggered that I'm going to, like, this is something that I'm very passionate about, and this is something that I'm going to put my energy into it, and yeah, that's when it really all started.
Yeah. And this is one common theme I hear from all the experts I'm interviewing. They don't stop their education the minute they get a job. Like you talked about these workshops that you attended, which was life changing for you, right? So, what else did you do, Parisa, to equip yourself to become an entrepreneur? I'm sure what you do now in both your marketing agency as well as in your relationship business is not what you would have done when you got started with it. So, what are certain things you did, um, basically things that you invested in to become who you are today?
So I think this is, like, for me, it's a double-edged question, because if you ask me what how I invested myself into becoming a person who would have authority to talk about relationships and communications, that's a completely different route, that entrepreneurship for me, because I took a lot of, like, I invested myself a lot for like years into really learning about relationships and communications, and I can, like, say that I've invested more time and more money than any college degree. So
Mhm.
that route, but the business aspects of it is like completely different.
Yeah,
So if you want to know about entrepreneurship and like how I found my way in that world,
sure.
um, I honestly think if there is like one thing that anybody needs to invest themselves, if they want to become an entrepreneur, um, I think it's marketing. The number one
Mm,
thing they should learn when they want to, like, do anything that is remotely close to becoming an entrepreneur is
yeah,
marketing, because it's, in my opinion, at least 80% marketing and 20% any production, like service or products or anything that they're offering. So um, I would say start with marketing.
that's so true. So once you were ready to, establish yourself as an entrepreneur, how did you manage to get your first few clients?
Um, I don't remember to
Looks
think about.
like your past life, right? Because it's been a while
Yeah,
now.
I have to think about that. But I think
I'm just curious to know how your marketing process has evolved over the years, and what do you guys do differently now to attract your ideal clients?
well, it's evolved from being like word of mouth and people that I knew, or somebody told somebody,
Hmm.
to online. That's like the biggest shift. But right now it's like way more complicated and way more different than how it used to be. But back in the day, it was just like word of mouth. So somebody knew and would let somebody else know, and it would just grow like that, which is priceless. It's just something that I don't think anybody can replace it.
Mm-hmm.
But even like the goal with online marketing and all that is to be able to grow enough and get in front of people that they can tell their friends, and the real growth comes from there. But it's way different now, because it includes a lot of investing in advertising and then all that. So completely different world.
Right. And how do you balance your time, Parisa? Because
Oh
you
my
run
God.
two
But
businesses, you have two kids. So,
the answer to that question is I don't know. I don't know. Like some days, um, that's something that I struggle with a lot. Some days I just like sit here and I'm like, oh, I don't, because I have my daughter is 16 months
mhm.
and he's 3.5. So, um, especially with my daughter because she's my son goes to school, so that's like most of the day he's not home. But with my daughter, it's like much harder because I have the mom guilt of now she's a little older, so I don't feel as bad. But I always like all along had the mom guilt of even if I did something remotely that I would be like I mean she was a COVID baby, so when she was born she was at home, I was at home, I couldn't go anywhere, and everything was locked down. But even when I started going to the office, which I waited until she turned 1, then I started going back to the office. It's just like really hard to deal with the guilt of
I know.
leaving her, going to work, and like, yeah, it's very
But
challenging.
still, you're just doing a fantastic job at juggling so
So
many
thank you.
things. So you mentioned about going to office. So is that where your team works from as well for your marketing agency?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so what is the focus for that business, Parisa? Do you guys do a certain type of marketing for a certain type of industry? Could you just elaborate a little bit about that business before we move
Yeah,
on to the more
we main,
interesting relationship business?
we mainly do branding for medical companies.
Okay,
So yeah.
I like that because you're so clear and specific about whom you target. Because a lot of
Mm.
entrepreneurs in their initial days do not have this clarity. So, did you decide to focus on this niche a little later, or right from day one you knew that you are going to do branding for medical companies?
Well, it just started that way, and I just like tried to keep it that way. But it started that way because my husband is a doctor, so I started like working with him and his team, and I had no intention of having a marketing company, but it little by little I was helping him here and there, and it grew and it became like this company that I never even thought I would like when I in my engineering days. If you ask me if what is one thing that I thought I would never ever touch, I would tell you marketing, because I would be
Right.
like it. I don't like it. I don't like selling. I don't like marketing. I don't like
Yeah.
to convince people to buy something. I'm not. I'm going to stay away from that forever and never touch it. But then it just like I actually before doing the marketing company I started another business with it for an online store, and I failed, and I
Mm,
that a lot of my 401k and all my like investment and everything out and spent in that, and it didn't work. So then I a lot of that went towards marketing, which was another company doing it. Then I was like, you know what, if I ever want to have another business I need to learn marketing. So I
right.
started taking classes and like start learning about marketing,
Uh-huh.
and then started helping my husband with one of his clinics and like just giving him few tips here and there. And then next thing I knew I had like 2 people working for me and 4 people, and like now we have grown to be like I have about 20 employees. So
Fantastic.
it's it just started by itself without any.
Yeah. Sometimes failures are also blessings, right? Because if you did not fail in your previous business, you wouldn't have got the intelligence that you should focus on marketing and learn that first before
No,
starting another business. Right.
definitely.
So, along the way, while your marketing agency is doing so well and your team is growing, how did you decide that you should also become a relationship coach? Because when I see your Instagram, I mean, there's some amazing content. For those of you who are watching and listening to this, please make sure you follow Parisa on her Instagram handle, because I think the content there is so authentic. So, did you first start putting out content and then you started creating the challenge and the business around the relationship genre, or how did that happen?
No, I think I started doing that before. So I
Mhm.
was like, the challenge is new. So that's something new. But before that, I started with like courses and doing like one-on-one training and stuff like that. And then that's where I'm like, it sets me on fire because I'm really passionate about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I when I was like, I always put myself or my side business on a back burner because the focus of my marketing company is like the clients that are paying us. So
Yeah.
um, I was always like very focused on that. So I didn't really do that much marketing for my courses and the relationship stuff. But then I think it was this February. So, oh my God, that's like 7 months ago, but it feels like 2 months ago. So that's when I started really doing some actual like putting out content and creating the challenge and doing online stuff for the relationship and communication stuff.
Amazing. And who would be the best people to benefit out of the challenge that you have?
If I want to put it in a specific way, I would say women that are more career oriented and more
Mm-hmm.
go-getter and either in corporation life or in entrepreneurial life. I think those would be the most take the most out of this challenge because
Mm-hmm.
uh, and I say it out of experience because when I was an experience of myself and experience of people that I worked with, because when I was in the corporate job, I know how that energy of actually doing and being a go-getter and like wanting to achieve things is the nature of masculine energy, and like
Right.
that's regardless of gender, right? It's within all of us. So um, that really we tend to bring when we are immersed in that a lot, and we have goals, and we're like achieving things, and we're like on the roll towards our goals. We tend to bring a lot of that into our personal relationships,
Mm-hmm.
and that really takes things off balance usually in intimate relationships. So that's what got me to put this challenge together to balance that energy a little more.
Right. Do you still do one-on-one coaching as well?
No, not really. I with the kids and my
Yeah.
no
But that's a
time.
good thing about entrepreneurship, right? You get to design your business life based on the priorities you have in your personal life.
Yeah, exactly. So I do some live training and some Q&A and stuff like that. We have it for people that take that challenge, the Connected Relationship Challenge. We have a private Facebook group that every once a week we have a live session around different topics and Q&A. And I also have a master class that I teach live once a week, but
Hmm.
in one-on-one anymore.
Yeah. So that's the time that you invest in this. And of course, putting the good content on Instagram. But otherwise, it's pretty much automated, right? Because people go to the payment page and they purchase the challenge. And then it's like more like a home study for them, right?
Yeah, but that challenge is just a small portion of what I
Mm-hmm.
do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it's 14 days, and each day there is a training and there's homework and all that, like the whole experiment, things to implement. But that's a small portion of what I do. I have another course that's much more extensive.
Okay.
It's called Infinity Paradigm. And that is where most of my focus and everything goes because
Mm-hmm.
it requires a lot of creating and like recreating. I grab people's feedback at each like opportunity that I get, and I implement it and I recreate stuff and I try to
Mm-hmm.
make it better and make sure that I cover a subject, and then somebody tells me, oh, well, what about this? I'm like, oh, great idea. So I have to go and recreate some of this stuff. So, and then it takes a lot of, for marketing stuff, it takes a lot of like creating different content. So all that takes a lot of time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Nice. So I was just, while scrolling through your page, I came across something very interesting. You speak about how to turn around arguments. And for any couple, that is inevitable, right? If you are living together under one roof and you are like two different human beings with two different personalities, you are bound to get into arguments. So, how can you quickly come out of such situations?
Well, I think one of the things that I mention a lot, even like if you look through my content, is that first of all, for any person who is taking charge to turn things around, because if even if one person does that, that's all you need, right? Sitting and like trying to wait for your partner to come around or for the other person to like turn things around together, usually you're going to wait until forever. So for if one person decides that they're going to turn things around, I think the pre-existing condition that has to be there is for that one person to have enough maturity and enough control and
Mm,
enough awareness on their own emotions and on their own state of mind. So when they can like keep that steady and not go up and down with each argument and with each comment that they get from the other person, then they have the power to really try to influence the other person and not let whatever comes out of their mouth control them and get them to go up and down emotionally. So that's the pre-existing thing. But to be able to turn an argument around, I think the number one thing is to be able to validate how the other person feels. So
yeah.
even if it doesn't make sense to you, me, the feelings are so real to people when they're feeling them that there's no way to invalidate it and say, well, you shouldn't feel this way, or how
Yeah.
you're feeling not right. Let me tell you what happened. The first thing is to be able to really validate and say, you know what, maybe if I were in your shoes, I would have felt the same. Maybe I mean, I can't even if it's okay to say, well, I can't see eye to eye with you. I don't understand it, but I'm
Mm,
sure feelings are valid and are true to you. So that's number one. And the number two, I think it's the most important thing and the most underrated thing in our conversation and arguments is that we don't really listen to the other
mm,
person. So number two would be to really be able to open up and without like the filters and without like constantly trying to come up with an answer, constantly trying to like convince the other person, just sit there and listen to how they're feeling and what they're experiencing and be able to put yourself in their perspective, put yourself in their shoes and look at things from their point of view and understand where they're coming from, because when you understand where they're coming from, then you're not on two different sides of the table, like really arguing, then you're on the same
right.
page, looking at it from the same view, same angle, instead of like really trying to convince the other person.
Right. This is amazing. In fact, when my husband and I get into arguments, in fact, he's also a relationship coach. So we
Oh,
constantly check with each other, are you playing from my side of the court or the opposite side? Because
uh,
being on the same team makes such a big difference. So
for
thank you for
sure.
sharing that. And the other
Of course.
common thing that I see in relationships, Parisa, is when people want to avoid arguments and they want to have a smooth relationship, one partner constantly feels that they're compromising on what they need. One
Mhm.
person's needs are sometimes compromised, and over a period of time, that can lead to a very bitter relationship, right? When one person is not vocal enough about their needs. So, what would
Yeah.
you tell to people who feel that way all the time?
Well, I think the most important thing is for each person to really understand what their needs are, because a lot of times we feel like we're compromising a lot and we feel like our needs are not being met, but if somebody asks us to write it down or really verbalize what our needs are, we are not 100% aware of
What they
what
are.
we need, right? So I think the number one thing is to be able to really sit down and um, understand that if, okay, I feel like I'm compromising a lot, I feel like my needs are not being met. So what are my needs? Like, what are the exact needs that I have? And how do I want my needs to be met? Because two people could have the same needs and each one of them would need it to be met in a certain way. So
Hmm.
to know that how what is and a lot of times we try to meet our needs through negative means. So it's important to understand like what are your needs, how can you have them met by your partner, by your family, by whoever is you're dealing with in a positive way. and then be able to sit down and communicate that. Like a lot of people feel like their partner should be a mind reader, or they should know
Yeah.
exactly
You've been
it's
living with me for 10
need.
years, so you better know what's running in my mind.
Yeah. So we expect other people to know, but they really don't. Like
Yeah.
you have to explain everything. So it would be helpful to know what your needs are, how you want them to be met, and really sit down and without that bitter taste that you said, or without any resentment, just put it out there and put it on the table, and then remind people that, hey, you remember I told you this is my need, can you please do that? And there's nothing wrong with it. Like, people have a lot on their minds, they're just like in their own world, they have just so much going on. It just doesn't occur to them that, oh, this
Mm.
was, let me go meet it. So it's good to have a constant open communication about it.
Yeah.
And I usually recommend to, like, and that's what I do with my husband, and that's what I recommend to other people, is to sit down once a week or every other week, for like on a weekend, for like an hour, for half an
Mm-hmm.
hour, just sit down and talk about it, like, openly, that, okay, in the last week, in the last 2 weeks, here and there, and like these three incidents, this happened, that I feel like if you did it this way, my needs would have been met better.
Mm.
Or like mention it. So put it out, because when we don't talk about it, it just like accumulates. And then we feel like, oh, I've been compromising for like years and years.
Yeah.
Another thing that I wanted to mention to you is that the funny thing is that the word compromise, the meaning of it, it has such a negative charge, but the meaning of it is, it means a mutual promise. So you
Mm.
can really have a mutual promise until you discuss what your needs are, so you can like have to be on the same page with that. So instead of looking at the word at the concept of compromising in a negative way, I think it would be good to like get together and
Mm.
talk about it openly, and then be able to come up with a mutual decision and a mutual way of doing things, to be able to, not only for the person who thinks they're compromising constantly, because if one person thinks they're compromising all the time, the relationship is kind of out of balance. So the other person wouldn't
Yeah.
100% feel um, satisfied either. So it
Yeah.
would be good to come together and discuss both parties' needs, and then how you want them to be met, and put it out there and just talk about it, instead of thinking that I'm compromising all the time.
Wow, this is really powerful, Parisa, because what you just taught is not just a better way to communicate, but also creating that ritual of sitting together every week and discussing this rather than just avoiding conversations. So, this
Yeah.
was really useful. And the other amazing thing that I learned from your journey is it is possible to run a business based on your passion, because when you talk about communication and relationships and all this, I can see your face light up. It's something that you love. And a lot of entrepreneurs usually end up starting a business for the money, right, which is the most profitable thing that I can do. You have your expertise in marketing, you've built it over the years, that's a profitable business now. And I think that gives you the freedom to also work on a business that's totally based on your passion. So it is
Yeah.
possible to do both, and you are a shining example of that, Parisa. So thank you so much for sharing all
Or
this.
no, definitely, it's possible to do both, but it takes sometimes it's a little bit of a detour to be able to like get to that level of a little bit of financial stability, to be able to focus more
Yeah,
on passion is, because we need the finances. So
absolutely. Thank you once again, Parisa, for coming on the show. Where can our listeners go and check out more about what you do and your work?
they can either go to my Instagram page, which is parisa.bady, Bady, or they can go to my website, which is parisabady.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much once again for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. Great talking to you.